welcome to Full Circle with Tessa Dooms. Yes, it's been a while since we've seen each other, but we are still here talking about democracy, talking about government, talking about politics, and talking about how we all get involved in creating the South Africa we all deserve. South Africa 2.0 is not going to make itself, and we're not going to wait for somebody else to come and do it. We have decided that we are the ones, as people of this country, that we have been waiting for. And so we continue today with conversations about how more of us get involved in our political culture as South Africans. And I'm really excited today about the guests that I have in studio. They are running a program and a part of a program, an initiative to get more young people to run for public office. So when we did our first episode of Full Circle, we actually had this conversation. We spoke about what it would mean for us to elect more young people, have more young people in our politics. And the two guests I had on our first show were very emphatic as young people that they were ready to vote for young people. But the question became, where do we find those young people? Do we trust the young people who are in politics today to be the ones that lead us into the future? But more importantly, how do we invite more young people who are not in politics as we know it today to run for office? So that's the conversation we're having today. And we're having it with people who are part of an initiative called Futurelect. And so this morning, thank you guys.
Thanks for having
for joining me. I'm so excited about this program.
Awesome.
So Dr Sithembile Mbete is one of our guests today, and then Irfaan Mangera, and you guys are going to tell us all about not only what Futurelect is and does, but I really want us to have this important conversation about what it means for the lessons we need to learn to make sure more young people get involved in our politics. So, Stay, I'm going to start with you.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Tell us about Futurelect, how it works, how it operates, what you guys do there.
Sure thing. So Futurelect used to be called the Apolitical Academy, Southern Africa. It was formed in 2018, co-founded by Lindiwe Mazibuko, who was the leader of the DA in Parliament. And when she was first studying and then teaching at Harvard, she met a lot of young Africans who kept saying, I want to do what you did. I want to run for election in my home country, and I don't know how to do it. And so she spent a whole lot of her time mentoring young people and giving advice based on her experience. But she realized that there's this big gap in the continent more broadly, but certainly in Southern Africa and in South Africa, where there's this distance between young people and politics and getting actively involved in electoral politics as somebody to be elected, not just as a voter. And so when she came back home, she formed Apolitical Academy Southern Africa, which is a leadership program. It's a leadership fellowship that runs for 9 months, 7 residential seminars that are run over weekends for young people in Southern Africa is where we started, to prepare young people who are interested in running for public office or in holding being political appointees and holding senior leadership in government or in public institutions, to prepare them to be able to take on those roles. And, you know, there are many leadership programs around in the country, around the world, but not many target specifically people that want to be in political leadership. And so that's what the difference has been with this program. And we take about 25 to 30 people every year, and we take them through this program. We've had people from every country in Southern Africa except for Mozambique and DRC. So every country in SADC except Mozambique and DRC. And we sort of walk this journey with them, a lot of it based on personal leadership and the idea that you can't lead other people if you can't lead yourself.
Right.
And this is explicitly a program for people who want to be ethical leaders. And a lot of doing that is understanding your motivations. What are your crucibles, your scars? What's your support system? And then we also do a lot of skills training. So in media, in speech writing, in campaigning. So we run a campaign simulation. So there's a skills component in policy design. And then there's also a systems, what we call a systems component, which is almost the civics 101. So how does democracy work? Looking at institutions, the relationship between politics and administration, and so really a curriculum that is set out to prepare somebody with the knowledge and the skills that they need to launch a political career.
Great. So that tells us a lot about how the program is set up. How do you plug into this program, and why have you gone on this journey?
So for me personally,
Yep.
so I've known Lindiwe for a long time. We went to university together, and so when she came back and wanted to start this program, I teach at the University of Pretoria, and so I helped her with a lot of the development, particularly of the systems part, the Civics 101 aspect of the course, and I was a guest lecturer. From when we started in 2018. And then in 2021, I joined full-time as the Director of Programs at Futurelect to really help with developing the curriculum and the program, and then to also assist with expansion, because we want to move into offering this in East Africa as well. And the program itself is open to any young person between the ages of 20 and 40. We've taken people in at 18 and up to 45. We'll stretch it. And who wants to run for office or be a political appointee. And our only criteria is that you have a track record of leadership. And be able to demonstrate your leadership impacting on a community. Yeah.
I think that's a great place to bring Irfaan in, because you're somebody who has led in different spaces, and you've kind of, in many cases, as far as I know, been pushed into having to lead and engage at different levels. What did this program mean for you? How did you decide to join Futurelect as one of its recent alumni?
Wow, okay, I don't know where to start. Being pushed into leadership has been a common thread throughout my life. And it started quite young, by 16. And I think that journey had resulted in me wanting to understand where's the next step. And last year, in many discussions with people, some of my mentors, and also self-reflection, was that in the crisis we are in, we need more young people to take up the baton of leadership. And I think this program was one that I saw that will help me understand myself and help me really develop the skills I think I need as a public leader. And so I applied, and I think after interviews and that kind of engagement, I got in, and the entire year was really a whirlwind of critical development. I think of myself, of fellows who are around me, because I think what this program has done is put us all in this room together, where we need to meet and engage and start questioning. And while we all come from different backgrounds, and as Dr. Steve said, the beautiful thing is that it's not just a South African thing, it's a SADC region thing, where we understand the complexities and how intertwined our politics is with all other countries in the region. But being in that room with the others who are feeling this way and or similar, really gets us to prioritize where, like, our next steps, our goals that we want to achieve. And while it's not just those who want to be elected officials, I think importantly this program has showed that there's space for those who want to be in a public office, the kind of people who work in the background of political offices. And I think that kind of thing has been important, because some of the fellows aren't interested in being elected officials. And yeah, I think that's just been a crazy amount of learning and self-development.
What do you think are some of the big learnings for you that were either surprising or things that you just were a steep learning curve? I think all of us assume we know something about politics because we see it and we hear about it, and we have our own imaginations about what politics entails, what running entails. I mean, so many people this year, you must just run, just start a party. I'm like, it can't be as simple as just getting a logo and getting a slogan and then you run.
Yeah.
So what were some of the learnings for you that were kind of, I definitely didn't think about this before, I should reconsider whether I want to do this thing. How did you find that?
If anything, that's exactly what it did, because I think the biggest awakening was the relationship between politics and money, and how that is intertwined in just how you gain more power, and how power is abused or misused. That thing really hit me because, you question, do you have a number? I mean, many of us debated this as fellows. Like, if somebody approached you with 10,000 or 10 million, would you refuse it? And I think that kind of development around the ethics really was brought forward strongly, because it's a reality that is consistent across the continent. And I think in South Africa, we know how corruption and these things work. So I think for me, that relationship between money in politics and how power is developed. What I also think was an important learning curve was just how we are young people, but we often not connecting dots enough. So I think the idea that you can just start a party and get a logo and these things are smaller in this bigger picture. And what I think was really beautiful was the fact that we could come from various ideological leanings and find common ground regardless. And I think that, speaking of that new politics that we want to reinvigorate and just establish and reimagine, this program allowed us to do that, because we could see that while we come from different ideological backgrounds, we could still find common ground on issues, and particularly issues of governance, which are severely lacking in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise an important thing around that, finding common ground. I think what's been stark for me in the conversation about coalitions in the country, for example, is this idea that coalitions are so foreign. And I'm like, no, that's like politics 101.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to be able to coalesce with other people.
And one of the big motivations for us in this program is that we've entered this period of hugely polarized views of politics, and this idea of having differences as being like life or death, right? And we see it literally in South Africa, right? I mean, there's still deaths of councillors in KZN a year after the local government elections. I mean, it's obscene that there's the level of political deaths that we have. And what we want to do with this, so there's no ideological basis for being in this. It's a non-partisan
That's
program.
a really important point.
It's a non-partisan program. We have had people who self-identify as conservative. We've had people who self-identify as socialist and communist. We've had people, with more liberal views on the economy, right? Or even neoliberal views on the economy. We've had people who believe in socialism as the way to run economies, all in the same classes. And engaging with each other. We've had people who differ significantly on different social policies, right? One of our years, actually, we had, because we've been running for 4 years, Irfaan was in the fourth cohort. One of our cohorts, we had an abortion activist who, was trying to make it easier for women to be able to access abortions, and we had somebody who was a religious conservative, all in the same cohort. And the point about this program, and the reason we try to facilitate so much peer learning and peer engagement, is to say that just because you disagree, it doesn't mean that you can't cooperate on certain things, that you can't engage with each other with respect.
Yeah.
And with mutual respect. and that you can't find middle ground on some things and in some areas. And so, some of my favorite moments of being a part of this is to just see where people come together, the most unexpected people, the most unexpected relationships.
And it's not a betrayal.
No.
It's not a betrayal of yourself to find common ground with somebody else. It doesn't have to be all or nothing politics. We can deeply disagree and find a way forward.
Exactly. And I want to just raise something, a link to what Irfaan was talking about, that so there's a lot of peer-to-peer peer learning that happens in this program. But what we also do is that we encourage intergenerational dialogue. And so we invite people who were in government, who've been in political leaders, who are currently political leaders from different countries in the region as guest speakers. And all of our programs are Chatham House. So we record nothing. And it allows it to create a space of openness.
Yeah.
And so we invite people who are in the system who actually talk about what it means to join we've had young politicians who come in are like, I didn't know the politics of where you sit at lunchtime and who you sit with.
Yeah.
And that can be a really huge deal.
Yeah.
Or people that don't, and who really explain what it is to be inside of the system and what it feels like and what are the things that they wish they knew. We also have people from different political backgrounds. So, in the South African context, we've had people from all the major parties come and speak. At different seminars with the different classes, and really also for our fellows to see that ultimately it doesn't matter which side you're on, you're facing the same challenges and trying to grapple with the same kinds of questions.
Yeah, Irfaan, I'm going to put you on a spot, just because I can. But we spoke a little bit about motivations. You raised motivations. Sure. What are your motivations at this point for public office? Firstly, do you want to run? Yeah. And secondly, what are your motivations for even considering, coming closer into politics as a young man who could do many things?
Sure. So I first want to go back to this point that Dr. Sithembile making around being exposed to the kind of people that we did in this year, because we got to see from young and old and their reasoning and motivation, so getting in the ring. And I think part of this program was we can't be on the sidelines, right? We need to be involved in some way or form, and there's space for all of us there. I think in my first interview with Dr. Stay, I was confused whether or not I want to be going in this route of public service, and I was, the idea of the independent route looked like it might be an option. But when I ended, and I think our graduation, I think I made it quite known that I do want to serve. I do want to be elected into office. So my motivation is to serve, and particularly as a young person who comes from a generation that has been so sidelined. And ensuring that the kind of politics I bring is the politics of care, of compassion, but also of a movement style politics, where we no longer just do this thing of party affiliation and party loyalty, but rather community building, movement building, so that ordinary people can find voice through me and through the work that is being done. And I think that for me is something I want to do in the build up to 2024 as the first step.
I assume you're well aware of the fact that people will say and have said to so many people, you want to enter politics, or you're just one of them.
Yeah.
You're just in it for the greed, you're in it for yourself. And politics lends itself to that in some ways, because you're putting yourself forward, you're putting your hand up.
Yeah.
And so people are like, what do you get out of it? You just came, you put up your hand to serve. What do you say to that? What's the rebuttal to you're just doing this so that you can have access to resources, you can have access to the things and the power.
Yeah.
We simply don't believe anyone could go into politics with really good intentions.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing has been because people have this huge distrust for public office. For the last few years, you've seen how that has weakened, and there's been less and less support of politics. So it's become this dirty word as been attributed to. And I think we need to recognize that politics is everything. I consider politics is personal. I wear that slogan quite often because I think we have to realize that determines so much of our lives, from when we wake up to when we go to sleep, where we operate in, the kind of services we have, and so on. So I think the rebuttal is that we need to be able to do something about it. And if you're seeing wrong happen, we need to be able to say, how do we get the best amongst us to contest and to be in office so that our issues can be heard and addressed from that office? Because that's where power resides in different forms. And I know the rebuttal is remove yourself, but we can complain on the sideline, and that's okay. But we're complaining against people who are doing the nonsense and doing the corruption and doing all these things. So my motivation is that if we want to see change, we have to be the ones who change things. And as ordinary people, that means putting our hand up, either in politics or in some form of community building work that allows us to create the society we want. Yeah. So the South Africa 2.0 we envision, we need to rise up towards that ambition and towards that vision. And part of the program that taught me this year was that we're so caught up in our mess that we're not envisioning new things. We're not envisioning a possibility. And I think for us to be in the ring allows us to build that possibility.
I just want to say on that, so, part of what we want to, our mission as Futurelect is to really put forward a view that politics is beautiful. And
are you sure?
Yes.
It's not just this ugly, messy thing
it's
where
not
people backstab
and that politics can be the most powerful force for positive change. And firstly, if you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you, right?
Yes.
And everything from our working days, the public holidays that we have, the environments that we live in, and whether they are comfortable environments, whether we have electricity, all of it comes down to political decisions.
Yes.
And we've taken it for granted that the right people are going to rise to the top to be the people that make those political decisions, and that hasn't, and we've neglected that process of kind of who gets to the top. And we're learning, and I think not just in South Africa or on the continent, but globally, that you can't take it for granted that the most ethical, the most capable of yourselves are going to be the ones that get to the top of political leadership. And just to tell you how much is at stake, because people often ask us, like, okay, you've got these programs with like 30 people, eventually we want to have, more people that are going through programs like this in different parts of the continent. And they're like, but it's meaningless, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the scale? In sub-Saharan Africa, there are around 9,700 national legislators.
Oh, wow.
So in terms of parliamentarians,
It's a small group.
it's a tiny group. In South Africa, it's 400.
Yeah.
And those 400 people are overseeing 2.3 trillion rand in spending in this year alone. It's 6.1 trillion, I think, over the next 3 years. 400 people are going to be responsible, and that affects everything. It affects our healthcare, schooling, roads, everything.
I mean, in sporting terms, we talk about your starting 11.
Yes.
It's your top 11. So, like, Manchester United is this, millions of dollars, millions of people franchise where everybody's emotional capital for some reason I can't explain is invested in the thing, but it's 11 people on the pitch at any given time, and you have to find your best 11.
You have to find, and we just haven't.
Yeah.
And we've just neglected finding that 11. And I think particularly for young people, I say this stat anywhere I can, which is on the latest population estimates that were released at the end of July. 42.7 million people in this country are under the age of 40. 42.7 million, that's 2/3 of the country is under the age of 40. I can tell you now, not 2/3 of Parliament is under the age of 40. No.
Yeah.
And so, as when we talk about the present, when we talk about the future, we are talking about people who are younger than 40 and aren't involved in the decision making, are actually spoken about in really horrific ways by decision makers. And so part of what we're doing with this work is not only to train and to prepare people that want to become public leaders, but to also create an environment for us to think differently around politics, and to actually harness its power, because I think that it's convenient for those who don't really care about young people, who don't really care about the future of South Africa. It's very convenient to them that we think that politics is messy and ugly and we don't want to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scare tactic. It's like scare young people away. It's gatekeeping by another name.
Yes.
And I do think it's important to talk about that, Irfaan, and to talk about the kind of labels and ideas that come around with young people's leadership. So is somebody in their 20s, able to be trusted with the public purse?
Yeah.
You're in that position. You were sitting in rooms, and it's not only a room of 30. A few months ago, we asked you to convene a room of 60 young people who wanted to be involved in politics, and there were over 100 sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
Why should we trust you and people like you and young people like you with the public purse, with that 2.3 trillion, to have leadership, to not go and just drink it at Konka? How do we know we can trust you with our future?
Sure. I think part of the challenge is getting those that are not young anymore to question their bias around why they wouldn't let a young person lead, or why they wouldn't be led by a young person. Because many of the leaders we have today were leading as young people.
Yes.
And I work for the Kathrara Foundation, so when we unpack the history, we realize that they were in their teens and their 20s when they were leading. And people respected them, they were given the support needed. It might not have been all the time, all over, but that was a practice. And they still have the audacity today at 70 and 80 to tell us young people are the leaders of tomorrow. And I disagree with that, because we are the leaders of today, and we're showing leadership every day we wake up and serve our communities. I serve in different organizations. Just last week, we were in a conference where at least 40 young people who were doing remarkable things, leading in their communities. And this is from rural communities to urban to township areas. And it shows that there's interest. It shows that young people are not apathetic, that they want to contribute and they have the capacity to do so. But it's just not non-recognition of that capacity. I don't need to show someone my CV to show that I have capacity. But the rooms that I'm sitting in, as a young person, I'm like, where are the young people? And we're right here. We're sitting right here. We're telling you what's the issues on the ground, what we think needs to change. And that's part of the big problem we have. I also think, so why should they trust us? We need something new. I think for so long we've been reproducing the same society over and over. There's been no disruption to that. Not necessarily no disruption, but over the years, when disruption comes, it's often, shifted to the side, and we don't give it its due, and don't criticize the value it adds and brings. So people look at the Fees Must Fall moment as a time where young people were rising, but then equally say they were hooligans, they were burning all our institutions, etc., etc.
And that moment changed a lot about South Africa, just in the way we think about the country, the way we think about what we do. But it also raised an issue, if I remember correctly, about money in the way that you spoke about earlier. And that young people's politics is often based on the patronage of older people who are willing to take you under their wing, willing to put you in the right rooms, willing to give you access to money and resources, as long as you say what they want you to say. And so the other question I often get asked about young people leading is, will young people who lead be any different from older people who lead? What guarantees do we have that something new will come when we see so many young people really just doing patronage politics, looking for a quick buck, being willing to do things that are devious or do things, be manipulated by older people for money, resources, power, even if it's minimal.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in party politics currently, where young people go in there vibrant, ready to change things, but very quickly get caught up in this culture, and it's a very toxic culture. The governing party is the same thing. So you had some of the leaders from Fees Must Fall. You have new layers of youth leaguers who are going into the party, but they are forced to conform to this culture of politics that says you need to follow me, and you will get some money, but it's in making sure that you're in line with what I'm saying. Just last week in this conference again, I met someone and he says, he's out of the youth bracket. He's in that, 40s, that space there, and he feels like he's done so much, but there's no space for him to lead. And part of that reason is because the people in that region is saying, no, you must nominate me for NEC positions coming up soon. And the people who are asking for that nomination are over 70. And that's a point where they should be retiring, but they're saying, no, we got you here, we supported you here, you need to give us that. And that's what gets people and young people so caught up in this mess. And where there's capacity to lead, he is somebody who is now excluded from that space.
I mean, is it a pipe dream to expect that young people in a country with this high rate of unemployment and youth unemployment particularly, I mean, I think we're over 60 or 70% at this point with youth unemployment, are going to be able to come into politics where money plays such an important role, and being able to negotiate your values and your ethics versus money, and that they're going to make the right kinds of decisions as young people? Is there a way forward, or a way that young people can contest and deal with this money issue in a way that gives us confidence?
So, on one hand, so one of the things around Futurelect that is really important to us is creating peer groups. We graduated our 100th fellow 2 weeks ago. And what we envisage is having peers of or communities of ethics, right? And of ethical practice and ethical conduct. And they hold each other accountable and are a space for each other to say, look, I'm being asked to do this. I don't know if this is what I want to do. And, how must I manage it? How can I handle it? We've got all sorts of people with all sorts of skills and expertise who've been through this program, who can really be a support base to each other. And I think that's critical. One of the things that we do, and we're developing, we've been working with one of the financial institutions on it, but we're developing our own module on, on personal finance for public leaders, right? How do you handle your money? How do you deal with those sorts of issues, because young people don't have that support. And if you've gone from being unemployed, and we see it at local government level, where a local councillor, I think, earns 20,000 a month now, and if you've gone or part-time, the ward councillors, I think just a local municipality now is about, maybe it's up to like 30,000 a month. But still, if you've gone from being an unemployed young person who was earning zero or getting the 350 Rand SRD, and then you're now all of a sudden earning 30,000 Rand a month, that's a huge jump, and no wonder these positions become so lucrative, right? And so sought after, because people are being forced to join politics in order to live and in order to survive. And so I think that, so on one hand, it is about creating the support and the spaces for people to be able to resist, the pressure to behave unethically. But then on the other hand, I think that it is about changing the sort of narratives that we have around politics to be able to make some of the institutions that we already have work the way that they're supposed to. So, for example, the Political Party Funding Act, which put in place a political party fund that was supposed to be that people, high net worth individuals, corporates, everyone could donate to, and that money then be used for running elections and distributed amongst people that want to campaign for office. I think that fund, if it has like 10 million rand in it, that's a lot. Right. Because no one's contributing to the fund. Why? Why aren't we
don't even know about it?
We don't even know about it. Why aren't we asking questions about it? Because all of these corporations that talk about good governance and all of those things, why then aren't you contributing to something that would achieve that? So I think that there's ways in which we could be addressing these problems that were kept out of the dialogue and the discourse because we're so caught up in party politics. And so I'm excited about this moment also, that we are having these conversations and thinking about how do we do things differently. And, change is gradual, then it's sudden. And so what we're doing is we're contributing to this gradual slow burn development, and with the faith that it's going to lead to a big moment of change.
I mean, I'm thinking about young people who are like, I would never want to be on a ballot. I don't want to be the person trying to hold a rally. I don't want to be that person. But Futurelect also has space for people who want to be in the bureaucracy, who want to be in public service, because young people are also shied away from that. Yes. Either because, we know that the vacancy isn't real, they've already decided who they want, all of those kinds of things, or that people just don't see the value of it. What does Futurelect have to offer for somebody who wants to be in public service rather than in politics fundraising?
Right. So for people who want to be in public service and in senior levels of civil service, this is also because all of those are political appointments, unfortunately, still in South Africa. And so this program is also for them. And we talk about how the skills that we teach the politicians, right, around like constituency building and movement building, civil servants also need to have those skills.
Because they have to engage on policies.
Technocratic decisions aren't just technocratic. You need to engage on policies. You need to bring people on side, both the citizens, but also the people that work in the different institutions. And you need to be able to understand how the politics works if you want to be an effective bureaucrat. I always use the example of e-tolls as a complete failure of bureaucracy, right? That you had the bureaucrats at SANRAL, talking down to people saying, because, the e-toll system is best practice in policy terms. A user pay model, it is best practice. But it was so badly communicated, sold to people that people just boycotted.
It wasn't sold to people. That was the issue,
people, right? They were just, and so it's really important for the people that want to be senior leaders in the bureaucracy to also have these skills. What we also do is that and several of the people that have done the program want to be behind the scenes of political campaigns. So, some of the guest lecturers that we have and facilitators that we have are actually already people who are campaign consultants or who work with political leaders. And that whole I call it the infrastructure of democracy, or the ecosystem of democracy, that it's not just about the person that runs, but it's the fundraisers, it's the campaign managers, it's the spokespeople, it's the organizers. All of those people also matter. And one of the with this wave of democratization that happened in the 1990s after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and democracy sort of adopted all over the world, but the people that were then providing the advice or the advisory services were usually American institutions or Western institutions that were the ones that were providing the campaign advice and running people's campaigns and helping with fundraising. And you've seen in Eastern Europe, I think particularly, how this external involvement of these, so the politicians are local, but the advice is coming from the outside. And it delegitimizes democracy.
And also you start taking solutions that work elsewhere and trying to cut and paste them as opposed to learning from below and learning from our environment.
And so what we want is that some of our graduates are also going to be the people that provide the campaign advice, that do the fundraising, the people that are going to head the electoral institutions, and the election management bodies, so that we then contribute to strengthening our entire infrastructure of democracy and of accountable, responsive, and open governance.
Yeah. So, Irfaan, one of the things you do have a lot of experience in, and I mean, one of the arguments old people have, they don't have experience. I'm like, lies and more lies, especially once you're in your mid-30s. Oh, you have experience.
There's a lot of experience.
You have experience. Like, people in their mid-30s are running multi-million rand companies, and when they do that, we clap for them.
Yes.
Literally, if we find the 25-year-old CEO, everyone's like, whoa, 25-year-old president. People are like, how possible?
Not possible.
It's crazy.
I mean, the Prime Minister of Finland is our age.
Absolutely.
It's the same age as you and me, right?
Absolutely. And so we have to have the conversation about experience as well.
Sure.
But one of the experiences you do have is about getting young people organized and, working as organizers. Tell us a bit about what it would take to get young people as organizers, even people who don't want to be in political office, especially, again, in a context where people are unemployed, volunteering is a really difficult thing in this context. Yeah. What gets young people motivated to be organizers for a cause, for a campaign, and to change things?
I think young people want to see a future worth living in. So I think there's a huge push. I've seen it in the work I'm doing across many communities now, where young people readily want to join and they want to organize and they want to do good by their communities and for themselves and their families. And it's drawn from a model that says, don't speak down to young people. Don't come there and assume that you know what the issues are of young people. They know it, they live it, they exist within that paradigm, that context you're saying about unemployment, about poverty and violence, and it's really bad. I mean, the communities we go to, every day we get updates. Just last week, there was a shootout in one of the areas we work in, and 15 people were shot. But these are the things that young people know and they've experienced on, and they want to change that dynamic. So part of the work is to make sure that we're not going to go and dictate what they want to do.
Right. We
coordinate, we help them find space and areas where they can debate and engage on issues. I mean, the electoral bill is one of them. It was our annual lecture topic, and young people who attended, they were like, hey, this thing is serious. We need to do something about it.
No, in Mafikeng, we had the same experience where we spoke to young people about electoral reform, and they went, sign me up. How do I get involved? They're organizing themselves, and they've decided they want to find 1 million young people, similar to your ambition, around 1 million young people who are going to, organize for electoral reform.
Yeah.
So I do think that we overcomplicate what it would take.
Yeah.
And the assumption about young people being apathetic then just, adds to that.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's about creating space, it's about creating opportunities for people to engage, taking them seriously, and providing support.
Yes.
So I want us to end this conversation by just reflecting on what the future could look like if we got young people to be more politically engaged, if we were willing to be led by young people. So I've committed a long time ago, and I say it as often as I can, that in my lifetime, I want to vote for a 25-year-old president. And I want to be able to create a South Africa where a 25-year-old president is possible, because the quality of young people that we produce by the age of 25 are exemplary. And we have a culture and in our society of being led by young people and trusting them. For me, that future means a more representative country. A country that takes itself seriously, that if the majority of people are 25, then, we should be able to produce 25-year-olds, and that will make us all better. What does a future look like where young people are leading, where young people are representing each other and themselves and the country, and where young people are taken seriously and are led, or where older people are willing to be led by them? Stay, and then I'll let it run.
In all of the conversation that we talk about young people, and, even the way we speak about children, we don't speak about children and young people as if they're human. And it's such it's because, all human beings want to improve their lives.
Right.
There isn't, fundamental to our existence and to our motivations, to the way, and there's the science about it, the biology about it, is that we want to firstly survive. I mean, we're wired for survival. But then once we're surviving, we want to survive well. All human beings want that. And yet we talk about young people as if they are not humans who want that. And when you consider that young people are the ones who are going to be alive in the future.
Yeah.
For me, a country that takes its young people seriously, that treats its young people as human beings, is one where we have institutions that are built for sustainability, where we have economic policies that are about sustaining for the next generations, not just for eating now. We have environmental policies and a view of the environment that's about sustainability into the future, and not just about short-term gain. We have political systems and political institutions that are actually fit for purpose. Globally, we're using party systems that are based on theory that was developed in the early 19th century. I say this as somebody that teaches
early
politics.
19th century
Right?
is a lot.
So those are those are the systems that we use, and the way that we think of political parties, or the way that we think of like representative democracy. Surely there's other ways that we could be doing these things.
Yes.
And I think that really harnessing and allowing young people to run things is the best chance that we have at creating systems, at creating policies, at creating laws that are fit for purpose, because they have to be for those young people to thrive and to act on that human instinct of wanting to not just survive but to live, and to live well. And so that for me is the biggest motivation behind creating this space.
It takes us back to Fanon. Every generation must find its mission, fulfill it, or betray it.
And the people that are governing us did that. They found their mission. And they fulfilled it.
Or betrayed
but
it.
They are currently betraying it by staying in power for too long.
Right. Irfaan, what benefit do we get from going with young people?
I think Dr. Stay is always so eloquent in answering these questions, and part of my answer was going to be that really it's going to be about innovating new ways, new policies that will see us into the future, sustainable ones, because the current ones don't do that. I mean, the way the economy is structured, the policies that are being put on the table is not speaking to the fact that people are still going to suffer. We're still going to create this us and them situation. where there's a very small few who benefit and live that life of dignity and where they can see a future for themselves. But the majority of us will continue to suffer, will continue to just fight for survival. And I don't think that's a life worth aspiring for. We need to create the conditions where people can be happy and can be joyful. So that's the kind of thing that I think should also be infused in this discussion, is when we're creating from a space of love, from a space of joy, so that, and particularly as Black people, I think we for a long time, and Nse from Georgia spoke of this, that we need to infuse that into our, and be authentic in doing that.
Yeah.
I think having young people brings into the room a lived experience of the fact that we don't want the current conditions and we want something different, we want something new, and it's not going to be exclusionary, it's going to be inclusive of the differences that we have, and part of that is ensuring that we have a broad-based approach, a broad base that speaks to all our issues. It's not going to be very finite, but I think when we start creating spaces in communities where people can actually design how they want to live, we then can find a more prosperous country.
All right, I'm going to have to wrap it up there, but I'm so grateful for the conversation. I'm so grateful for the work that you guys are doing. For me, Futurelect represents a really, really important intervention. I worked in the youth development space for many, many years, and there are thousands of programs on the continent that are, as you said, rightfully say, about leadership, but way too few are about, boldly saying young people can lead their countries. And I really am appreciative of your work in that regard. As we come to the end of this conversation, it's a reminder that politics is about the power to act. It's not just about political parties and political institutions and voting day. It's about our power to act, and we must see young people as having some kind of power, and we must enable that. I think we live in a kind of society where one of our biggest assets going forward is going to be people. And we have more young people than we have anything else. We heard the stat. So we must invest in young people and invest in the future through their hands, through their minds, through their talents, through their joy, through their energy. So the South Africa we want to see and the South Africa we deserve is going to require us to trust young people, to let them lead, to let ourselves be led by them, and open space rather than close it. And so as we end today, please start considering who the young people are you're willing to be led by. Yeah. Start approaching them, start asking them what they need, how you can support them. 2024 is around the corner, but it's not too late to find young people who you want to support for 2024 as we let youth lead. Thank you.